Well, good morning. Almost afternoon. I will just echo Richard's welcome to this session that we've entitled, Do I Have to Watch Everything I Say? Microaggressions and Their Impact in the APU Community. And as you know from that lovely welcome, I'm Stephanie Fenwick, this is Elaine Richardson, and together we really do have a passion for equity and inclusive excellence. Well, we are absolutely delighted to see each and every one of you here to engage in a conversation that we think is critical in higher education today. But more importantly, we see real potential for this conversation to foster trust and deeper care in our APU relationships and in our learning environments. When Elaine and I first started co-facilitating on this topic in 2015, we submitted a proposal to Faculty Development Day. The proposal was accepted on microaggressions, but they strongly recommended that we take the word microaggressions out of the title, because otherwise no one was going to come to our session. Okay, so we regrouped and we took microaggressions out. We named the title of the session Navigating Difficult Dynamics in the Classroom, and people came to the session, and out of that interest generated in that session, we did a full year-long faculty learning community about navigating in the classroom dynamics around race, class, and gender. Right. The next year, there had been quite a few, if you recall, national incidences of racial unrest across higher education campuses. And the word microaggressions was much more prevalent in the news and in social media. So we submitted our revised and updated proposal to Faculty Development Day, and the proposal was accepted. But this year, we put the title back in. We put microaggressions back in because we knew that it was such a timely topic. Proposal accepted, but we honestly didn't know if anybody would show up at this session. In other words, was the word microaggression still such an issue for people that it would just be a total turnoff and it would just be me and Elaine in the room? We were so surprised. The session was filled, and we were delighted because we saw a number of people that we didn't usually see at diversity-related events. Together, we reviewed the literature, both for and against microaggressions, and we shared our experiences with one another around this idea. Out of this particular session, a broader interest started being generated. And I think people started thinking, this isn't just one group's agenda pushing on students this idea of microaggressions. Instead, no, it was becoming important to learn about and to name this dynamic that really has an impact on student flourishing and on the whole APU community. So it started spreading more across schools and departments. Today, we have current research from the HARRY Climate Study, the Higher Education Research Institute climate study that was conducted here last year at APU that undergirds and supports our need to continue this conversation, this understanding, this learning about how we engage with one another in community so that all of us can thrive.
Again, we are so honored that you have taken time to be here, that out of your busy days you thought, this is something that I want to come talk about. We're going to talk about microaggressions, but we recognize that it is just one aspect of this whole topic of diversity and many aspects of it. So what we want you to do is to experience what it would be like for us as a community to come together to learn to have some authentic conversations with those who are different from whom we are. Because therein is where it all comes together. We can talk all day and give you the right language, but until that conversation becomes authentic, until you've decided this is my responsibility, that I need to do something about it, then it won't change. And we're a community who are growing, changing, and learning together. And so part of that is, when you read that session description, right, you thought, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be courageous. I'm going to go. But the idea from that, and I won't read it all to you, but what we wanted to know is that you will have a place here. This is going to be a non-judgmental space. This is a space where you are going to hopefully trust those around the table with you, and we're going to have this conversation about microaggressions. And the reason it's important for us is because it impacts our community. It's not just about us personally, it's about this community. We have students who are looking to us so that we can help them make their way in the world. We want to give them that foundation in our community. We have our colleagues who are looking to us to help them navigate this space. So this is about our community. We want you to leave here with this greater sense of self, this greater self-confidence, greater awareness. We're going to give you a few strategies, some time to talk about some things, but as you leave here, we want you to be able to impact others across difference.
So specifically, this session is designed around all of our unique experiences. It's grounded there. It is from God dwelling in us that we, as the scriptures so eloquently say, we live and we move and we have our being. And it is that co-crafting with God on a daily basis through our experience that we learn about different things. So this session will take information that we're going to give you about microaggressions, some self-reflection, some interaction with other people, and then some application to take away in order to kind of have a rich engagement around the topic. Now, typically we would have a session agenda up here to give you kind of a sense of where we're headed, but we decided to do something a little bit different this time, and we've given you a handout resource packet. There's one for everyone on the table. And on the front, there's a worksheet. It's two-sided, and it's going to kind of guide you through the flow of this session. It will allow you an opportunity to tie your own experiences to some of the ideas and the activities that we'll be dealing with today. It's yours to keep, but don't worry. We do have a very specific agenda in our minds about how we're going to move together through this next, I want to say 62 minutes. Okay, oh no, here come the disclaimers. All right, again, I'm going to reiterate what Elaine said. We think it took courage for you to come into this session today because this is a topic that engenders a lot of fear and mistrust. So we want to start by telling you what this session is not. So first we just had one or two disclaimers. And as we kept talking, we're like, oh my gosh, they're just spilling out of our mouths. It's like we have 101 disclaimers. And somebody said, no, it's like 101 Disney Dalmatians. And so I want you to know that the disclaimers have nothing to do with these Dalmatians, but they're very cute. This session is not about trying to catch people out. We are here in a spirit of generosity, learning with one another. It's not about making people feel guilty or stupid. If those feelings arise for you, please release them and check in with them later. While we will be using humor to lighten the conversation because that's just who we are, we take this topic very seriously. We are not here to diminish any group. You may feel triggered. These physiological responses that happen that kind of take us unawares when something emotional comes up based upon our own socialization, you may feel triggered in a topic like this that could raise some of those things. We may feel triggered. We are also in process. We might get blindsided by something, and I'm just going to invite us all to do our best to, again, check in with that, try to re-engage as quickly as possible, and move on.
Additionally, when you think about what this session is not, it is not white bashing. And sometimes when you come to this session, you're like, you're ready to go. You've got your list of things you want to say and your list of defenses. This is not what this is. We're not here to elicit any sympathy for any marginalized group, but we want to bring those experiences to light, to recognize that it's more than just a word, that they are experiences. And we are not negating anyone's kindness. How often things happen out of a spirit of kindness, but it is not the intent, right? It's the impact. There are many good intentions that have hurt people. While I think that Richard said something about us being experts. We just kind of chuckled at that. But we do have knowledge and we have had experiences through who we are. As a team, we've gone through a lot in getting to this journey. But we don't claim to be the experts about this journey. And we are always, all of us, in process. And some of us are at different places. Some of us are just, how do you spell microaggressions again? And then others of us feel like we've been on this journey for a long time. But we all want to make sure that we are extending grace to one another. So when you think about us having a different point of view, we all come from very different places. So think about where you are, you know what's going on for you inside right now. You know what you're thinking about this topic, and know that we're all there. And I want you to look at this graphic and think about it. Sometimes we take this experience with this word, wherever we are, and we all have a different perception of what it is. So you may think it's a snake, and someone at your table may think it's a tree. And how do you, having these differing perspectives, come to a place of understanding that it's an elephant? And so it's that journey that we'll be doing part of today.
Okay, so what we're going to do for the next few minutes is, again, we've grounded this session in experience, so we're going to share with you briefly our connections to the topic of microaggressions. We'll stop in the middle, we'll talk about some ground rules, which you also have on bright neon cards on your table for conversation. Then we're going to ask you to think about your own connections to this topic. But I'll go ahead and start. As the Director of Faculty Support in the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, I love supporting faculty in their teaching and learning practices. I also teach in the Master of Arts in Leadership program, and I am completely energized by helping students meet their academic and professional goals. But several years ago, while I was teaching in adult professional programs and finishing my own graduate degrees, I started becoming aware of how my identity, my white identity, that as a woman and being white, I have quite a bit of power and privilege, and I started seeing how that was impacting my students in the classroom. And then I started noticing how it was impacting me with my colleagues and then my friends. And having grown up in a primarily homogenous, I won't say primarily, it was a completely homogenous family, and then an extended community, all the way into my adulthood. We were taught never to talk about race, religion, or politics. Just don't talk about it. So as I continued my doctoral research, and continued teaching, this theme of microaggressions became very salient, first in my literature review, and then as I started collecting data, and then in the findings themselves. So I cannot go into an interaction now without having a sense that I have lots of blind spots still that cause me in conversation and in my actions to harm other people.
My colleague and I, we do this so well and we enjoy doing this work together, but we have very different experiences that have brought us to this work. My experience with microaggressions started much earlier, and I didn't have a name for it. I only had a feeling for it. I grew up in Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana, the great Midwest, and at the age of about 10, fifth grade, and I loved Indianapolis public school system at that time. What they did was they gathered up a lot of smart kids from a lot of schools and put us in one incubator school with one teacher. So you had kids who didn't live near one another, but we all went to the same school, and it was a 4-year program to advance the brightest of the bright to send them on to change the world. Well, guess what? I was the only black child in there, which was no big deal. You know, I come from a black family. I'm good. I have my identity. I'm 10. We're all in there. We're all super smart. We're all having fun. Then there was a snag that I didn't realize was a snag. The teacher was a racist. She was white, and I don't know, I was little. She looked 80, but she was probably like she was, you know, we talk about the kindness. She would come to me and say, "You look really cute today. Who gave you those clothes?" Yes, this is what she'd say to a 10-year-old. Or she would say, "Now, this field trip is going to cost X amount of dollars. Do you think your parents will have that?" And I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't they? Well, who gave me these clothes? Well, my parents gave me these clothes. You know, the whole concept of, I didn't know at the time what she was doing. Well, I came to realize over time, she would say, well, I know that this is hard for you. And I'm thinking, well, no, not really. But you know, you're 10. And I'm really grateful for my parents. They allowed me to have a voice. I could tell them what I wanted. After 2 years, I looked at them and said, I'm not doing this anymore. She's too mean. She's too horrible. I will not go to that school again. And being the wonderful parents they are, they're like, okay. Because I just couldn't. I didn't realize then that there were microaggressions and they were constant. Could you imagine being 10 and 11 and every day when you went to school, there was something that would minimize you? I had no language for that. I just knew that it was more than I wanted to handle. So when you think about coming from that experience at that age, that our journeys are different, but we've landed in the same place. And so with that, as you're mulling over those things that we've said, and before you think about your own connections, let's talk a little bit about ground rules. I'm not going to really belabor them, but I think it's important because the work that we're going to do in here can be challenging. We want to make sure we're respecting one another, and that means actually listening. We want to be honest. We want to make sure that we're being risk takers and that we're not just expecting someone else to be the risk taker. Be aware of difference. Be aware of that. Don't pretend it's not there. And then speak from your own experience. Tell your own story, not some story that you heard or read, but tell your own story. And be patient with yourself and with others. Give that grace that you really want. Give that as well. Be generous in your thinking. Expect that people really mean good in this conversation. And I really encourage each of us to sit with the discomfort. Sometimes it's really easy to say, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. But sit with that a little bit and see where it takes you. And then, importantly, confidentiality. If you want to share something from this experience, share your own story from this. Talk about your own journey. Let's honor and respect one another's confidentiality.
Thanks, Elaine. Okay, now this is your first opportunity to work with your fill and hand sheet. I like worksheets. Okay, so your connections to this topic is that title on this slide. If you could just think for about 1 or 2 connections with your own experience and the topic of microaggressions. Now, you might come into the room today and say, well, I came here to learn about it. I don't have an experience. That's your experience, right? So you're going to write that down. So just really quick. Yes?
Is there going to be kind of just an overall definition of what it might be?
Yeah, we're going to get right into that right after this. So, okay, thank you for bringing that up. So not having my session agenda really wasn't the best idea. Okay, so, because you don't know where you're heading now. We're going to take a minute to check in with our own experience. We're going to do a brainstorm around what people think of when they think of microaggressions. That's the next 2 things. I want to hear a little bit about elephants in the room. Then we're going to go into definitions and explaining, and we're going to let you hear from an expert, and then we'll engage with that material. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It's just, you're asking us to explain our experience with it, but I was...
Even if that is that there's not a lot of experience with it, or you're not sure what to put, then that's what you would just put in here. Just want you to connect right now with where you're at.
If I may say, that's part of that risk-taking. I don't know what to put, so what do I do? Then write that down. I don't know what to put. I'm not sure what that means. I've not had that experience. That's where it is. Let's be honest with ourselves. There is no expectation that we all come in here and have similar experiences or even any experience.
We're going to just bring it out into the larger room, not your particular connections, but we want to know everything that you think about when you think about the phrase or word microaggressions. And because Elaine thinks she has worse writing than I do, I've been tasked with writing, but mine's really awful too, but I'm going to give it a go.
Now that we have our writing expert in place, what are some words that have come up for you when you think about microaggression? Yes.
I had a couple of disrespect, pain, and laughing behind your back.
Disrespect, pain, and laughing behind your back. Thank you.
Assumption.
Prejudice.
I have ignorance.
Ignorance.
Unintended harm.
Unintended harm.
Insults and also assaults.
Insults and assaults.
Cultural.
Say that again.
Cultural.
Cultural.
Devaluing.
Devaluing.
That was
Subtle, intentional harm.
passive aggressive connected with that.
Racism.
Can I give it to you?
It's not, it'll go up there. I can't spell that.
Anyone else?
Anger.
Danger?
Anger.
Well, I didn't know that danger was part of anger. Wow, okay. And the word
Exclusion.
Exclusion. Yes. Discrediting. Stereotypes.
we got stereotyped.
There's stereotypes.
Oh, maybe I don't. Never mind.
Yes.
Body language?
Body language.
Status quo.
Status quo. So the idea is that as you're working your way through this, you realize that there are some things that you see that would help you to identify microaggression.
So, in addition to the experiences that we've had where we're connecting what we think about this word, and then you've seen now all the words go up on the easel sheet, always in conversations like this, remember I'm from a conflict-avoidant family. We have lots of elephants in our house. Wow. There are elephants in the room. So I'm going to name a couple of mine. I've given you a place on the sheet. We have to name yours if you want to. I have my biggest elephant when I come into the room or I'm in conversation with somebody. Oh, you want me to be mine. I'm sorry, Richard. The biggest problem that I have, the elephant that I don't want to name, when I'm having a conversation or in interaction is fear. That's this guy. So I'm just plain afraid about this because I never know when I'm going to stumble. I don't know if what I'm going to say is going to be offensive, so I have to struggle with that. My next one is this little guy right here because he's right in the forefront because this is painful for me. So my other elephant that I wouldn't name that is in the room, kind of crashing around, is pain. This is painful for me. What about you, Elaine?
I think for me, the biggest elephant in the room when I approach this subject is resistance. It's really there. And I have another one. It's not for this particular group because you're here because you self-selected to be here, but sometimes I'm in environments where people have not chosen to be there, and the elephant in the room is apathy. It's like they'd rather not be there, it's not important, and that is something that I think we need to address.
So can you just in your head think of an elephant? If you want to, you can write it down next to your graphic, and then in a second, I'll just, if anybody wants to shout one out, we can maybe name some of these other elephants. I tried to find an elephant sound, but does anybody do a good elephant sound? Yes, Aaron,
Frustration.
frustration.
And I think that is possible on both the sender and recipient side.
Okay,
Because the sender is frustrated with not understanding how to articulate thoughts that they may want to articulate. And then when they do say it, if they say it in a way that is offensive, now the recipient of that's like, oh, man, really?
Yeah.
And so you really have this disconnect, and then both people walk away. Totally frustrated, upset, and probably a serious breakdown in communication.
that is so on the mark. It's frustration for both sides. Another elephant.
Denial.
Denial. Oh, you forgot to name my other elephant. Thank you. Denial. Denial is a great one. And actually, we are acculturated in groups that we find where we're the majority, or where what is considered we're considered normal. Okay. Denial is part of how we have learned to live. And so there's a lot of implicit bias around and behind denial that also has to be worked with in this area. Other elephants? Anybody?
Insecurity.
Insecurity. Absolutely. Insecurity. I saw another hand.
Christ-like.
Christ-like? Unchristlike. Okay. That would be, we're not typically calling each other out on that. All right, we're going to take those things now, the connections to our experience, the brainstorm about what we think of when we think about the word microaggressions, and some of these elephants, and now we're going to move into definition and explanation and some knowledge from an expert in this field.
So when you think about what are microaggressions, and I know some of you have been thinking, please tell me, help me. So you want to think that they're subtle, and that came up on our list. Nonverbal insults and assaults directed towards people of color, often carried out automatically or unconsciously. They're layered insults or assaults based on one's race, gender, class, sexuality, language, immigration status, phenotype, accent, or surname. In other words, it's not just limited to race. It is the cumulative insults or assaults. These take their toll on people of color and other differences.
So this definition is adapted from Daryl Wing Su, who is a professor at Columbia College, Teachers College, Columbia University of Psychology, and he came out with what I would consider a seminal and primary work on this topic in 2010 called Microaggressions in Everyday Life.
Kind of reflect on your own experiences and what you want to have happen. In your packet, we have a summary of microaggressions themes checklist. And what I'm going to encourage you to do, this wouldn't be an appropriate workshop if we didn't have homework. And so this is your homework. I want you to honestly read those 6 themes, see where you are, and just be honest with yourself about where you land with that, and then what you want to do about it, and then do it. So that's the homework assignment from this workshop. Now we're going to go on, and we have a few more things for you to do, but I didn't want anyone to leave without having that.
Okay, if you look at the next page, you'll see something that we call an experience with microaggressions worksheet. So now you've heard a definition, you've heard an interview that explains a little bit more about this idea. And what we'd like you to do is consider your own experience with this idea. So we want you to take, I'm going to tell you the instructions first. I'm going to ask if there are any questions, and then I'll let you move through that. You're going to take a few minutes to read through the example statements representing different areas of microaggressions: race, gender, disability, church background, and classroom settings. We're not, Dalmatian disclaimer, we're not saying this is comprehensive. We're just giving you some examples from some areas that are prevalent. Quickly go through each statement. I want you to read the statement, think about it. If it doesn't make sense to you, put a question mark by it and go on. This can be things that have happened to you or things that you've seen happen in other conversations. Put a question mark in front of anything that's confusing so you can just move on and move through. It's a two-sided activity. You've got pencils and pens at the table. And then for the ratings that you give yourself, what are the ratings? Never, always, never, rarely, sometimes, often. Nobody's going to see what you check. This is for you. Now, we are going to use it in conversation afterwards and talk about some things that came up for you or you're thinking about as you go through and do the survey, but you don't have to share your specific answers with anyone, so I want you to know that before you start. Do you have any questions about what we're doing next here with this 2 pages of checking off your own experiences? Okay, great. We'll give you a few minutes to do that.
Fortunate to have so many wonderful, articulate professionals in the room. But because your time is limited and you're going to leave us if we're not finished, we're going to move forward. Thank you.
Now, see, she did that so you wouldn't have to kill me when I just said stop talking. Thank you, Elaine. Okay. Generate some really good conversation. What we're going to do now is think about these conversations and then how we can live out what we've thought about and talked about, seen in the video, in our community here. Is anybody's picture up here? You see yourself? Anyone? No? Okay. I pulled as many as I could off the... Okay. So, here's what's going to happen as our last thing together. As we were thinking about the video and watching it together, we were both writing down things kind of furiously. And what they did was they turned into, if we were at a table right now, these are the kinds of things that we would want to talk about. So we're going to share what our table discussion prompts would be, and you're welcome to use any of those. Although, again, they're probably pretty specific to our experiences and reactions. I'd like you at your table, just in your head, to think about the most salient thing that you think would be good conversation at the table after doing this activity and thinking about how we live this out as Christ followers in APU and with one another. And you guys can choose just something to talk about. We won't have much time to talk about it. It will just be what we would consider the beginning of larger conversations, more conversations across campus that go beyond this room. So here are some of our topics. How can I, as an individual and in my spheres of influence, become more aware of microaggressive behavior? How do microaggressions intersect with our Christian values and beliefs? As a community, we often talk about the 51%, but we don't talk about how students of color are treated once they're here, where they are often not welcomed or made to feel as if they are part of our community. What role do faculty, staff, students, and administrators have in this? What are we as a community doing to attract and retain students of color? Regarding the role of the media with the procession of black males, how are black males impacted by their campus experience at APU? And how do microaggressions hinder their ability to thrive in our community? What is it about us as Christians that causes many of us to have a hard time accepting the reality of microaggressions? And once we find out what they are, how do we learn to live together and not hurt one another?
I think it is so crucial that we not let the conversations end. I've been observing this room. There's been so many animated conversations going on that let's not let it end. Have those conversations. Make sure that you take anything that you've learned and share it. Don't hold on to it yourself and share it. Spread that word. This may be hard for some people. I know that we think that we all do this well, but I'm going to challenge you to find people who are different from you, who have had different experiences, and actually talk to them. Not just check it off. I met that person, I know their name, I know where they work, but actually talk to them, listen to them, share your story, and not in a comparative way, but in a way that will help you to learn and to grow. And then if you find that these conversations have been too much, come on, I'm a psychologist, go get therapy.
And And do resource yourself with readings and research about microaggressions. As a majority person, I think that a majority white person in terms of my own culture and not knowing it very well, I've often expected people of color to do that work for me. It's not that I don't want to ask questions and get information, but instead I need to do my own work. I need to resource myself. I need to read. I need to have experiences of other people and really do that work of becoming more aware so that I don't commit these microaggressions. That's a perfect closing. Thank you for your great attention today.
Thank you.